Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Outer Ground Studios podcast. I'm Sheriff Dakin, and today we're recording with Erin Marantette.
Hello.
Hello.
It's great. It is great to be here. I'm excited to be on the show. You guys have some fun stuff.
Let's see. Thank you. Thank you. All right. And from what I've seen of your work, you work with this specific gaming studio called SOMA Games.
Yes. Uh, I have a long my game industry history is only with them. I met them when I was a freshman in college. I interned with them for a summer, went back to college, finished college, and about a month before I graduated, I walked in to invite them to my senior art show because it was like, hey, you guys are part of my art journey. Would you guys be interested in coming this in a month? And they're like, sure, that sounds great. Hey, what are you doing in a month? I don't know. And then they said, it's like, do you want some work? It's like, yes, please. So I started part time about at the very beginning of 2015 with them as a concept artist.
Oh, wow. So you've been with them for about 4 years now.
Mm-hmm. I've been with them for 4 years. I've evolved from 2D concept artist to 2D generalist to 2D and 3D because and from there then last year 2 years ago yeah 2 years ago got brought on as the art director.
Man, it's very in-depth history you have with them. Were you with them when they started up the business?
No, they started in 2008, and I met them in 2011.
Oh, okay. What was the first game that you worked on with them?
Technically, the first game that I contributed to was called, oh gosh, Wind Up Robots. I did. They were as part of the internship. They were teaching me like how to some of the things that you typically do, and they showed me how to do what tri views were even. They showed me what tri views even were, and it was like, oh, this is a thing. This helps modelers do their job better
Hmm.
and job quicker. So and it wasn't a necessary step for their concept artist and the modeler to. They didn't need me to do it, so it wasn't a hey, this is a like we need you to get this done, otherwise the game will fail kind of thing. But here's something that would help make our game go better. So it was a great like intern task, but that was my first thing that actually helped make the production of the game go forward.
Oh, all right. How big was this gaming studio when you first joined?
Um, I can't remember, but the people we still have some of the same people then who are there now. And a couple of people have left. They had a different art director at the time. I want to say when I first met them in 2011, they had maybe anywhere from 8 to 10 people in office on any given day, and a couple of people who were contractors who worked from out of office, so maybe 12 people total. But I think I'm overestimating that actually. But then in 2015, they had between 2011 and 2015 they had downsized a little bit, so they were I think, and I got brought back on. But since then, we've been growing pretty rapidly.
Pretty rapidly. I would
Mm.
say I've been looking up what you guys do, and you seem to go very fast from making, again, Wind Up Robots, which was an app game, correct?
Yes,
And now you're creating Redwall, which is this kind of big game that's being featured on Xbox One and PlayStation, isn't it?
yes, it is.
Uh,
I don't know if it's being featured, but it's definitely we do have the games on there.
yeah, which is really cool. I'm surprised that you could even get the rights to something like Redwall because it's this very beloved children's type thing.
It is. It is. I wasn't a part of the process of us of SOMA Games getting that, but I know part of the story.
Oh, really?
And yeah, so we got Redwall as a license mostly because um, Random House was working with someone else that the company knew, and then that guy brought us on to help him with some of the assets or something or other. I wasn't a part of the discussion at the time, so I don't know all the details. And and so then we ended up and then his specific deal fell through, but our deal still stood like strong. So we had this relationship with Random House with Redwall in between us, and it's like, well, we still want to do this if you guys are okay with this, and that's kind of how it moved forward. It took a while. Like we had started stuff. Like when I first got brought on, I was doing concepts for Redwall from the beginning,
Hmm.
but it was all conceptual work, so that way we could prove that we could do the game, not that we actually were starting game production.
Oh, so
And
you were like working on it without technically having the rights to it yet?
the rights were being like the license and the agreement were being worked on at the time.
Oh, okay.
Like nothing. It was a well, all this stuff can be scrapped at a moment, but it's only one person on the company who's working on it. Versus because at the time we were working on a game called G Prime as a company, but then in between things, I was working on things mostly characters actually. And I was doing a lot of just research on how do we want how the character bodies to look, because there's a lot of different ways you can anthropomorphize animals.
Hmm.
So that was part of that licensing, like kind of questioning, and then where at least where my role fit in that was that they were going to still pay me to do some like rough concepts and get these things kind of thought through, so that way when we were able to start moving forward as a full company, we had at least a little bit of foundation to work off of.
Yeah. That's one thing that I really like about your company is that you post a lot of your work in progress stuff, so it's very transparent what your process is, artistically speaking.
Mm-hmm. I think a part of that comes down to the fact that not everyone on our team read Redwall as a kid. I didn't actually read Redwall as a kid. I was too caught up in a different book series by Tamara Pierce, and uh, by like the idea, like, well, we still want to make sure our fans, like, there is this, like, the fans love this series, and we want to make sure that we're doing right by them. And as we're creating this, it's not just a moneymaker for us. Like, we want to make sure that like the game is a fan service to the narrative and honors Brian Jake's work, and that's something that we're hoping to do through this, and that we can honor it. And I think part of that is making sure that fans feel like they have a say and are able to observe, like, oh, hey, this is going the way I imagine it. We can't please everyone because many people have different visions of what Redwall was, particularly because of how Brian Jakes wrote Redwall, was leaving it both very descriptive and extremely vague, which is sometimes very frustrating as an artist trying to visualize this space.
Hmm.
But it's also a very fun challenge, and then finding a good medium, not medium, good balancing point, so that way we can create something that both we believe in, but then also that the Red Bull fans can believe in.
Hmm. And how do you think you hit that? Like, do you think you personally did that very well?
I think there's some limiters for us because we're like stepping into this. One of the things we actually intentionally did is that this first game called The Scout doesn't take place in Redwall, because when we get the chance to finally display Redwall itself, we want to make sure we did it right. So we wanted to have a testing grounds. So we've tested outside of Redwall,
Oh,
like as a
okay.
location. So the game takes place at a location a little bit. Oh gosh, I can't remember where it is on the map. Um, I think it's west or east. I can't remember. Southwest or southeast of Redwall is a place called Lily Grove, and your character is you play as either Liam or Sophia. You go and you're training to become a scout, and then over the journey of the game, right now we have Act One out, and we're working on Acts Two and Three, which there's going to be three acts to this. Um, Over the journey of the scout, your player character travels from Lily Grove to the Red Wall.
Oh, okay. And how much of this is based off the book series storyline? Like, is it like an original storyline, or is it very, uh, sorry, I forget the word, accurate to the story of Redwall?
It takes place the winter before the first Redwall book, and so it's an original storyline, but we're bringing in characters that should be familiar, but we're being very selective about which characters are. Like, we didn't want to bring in Matthias and like be like, oh, hey, here's Matthias, everyone knows and loves him, and then we portray him wrong on our first go, and everyone hates us for it. that was one of the things that could have happened with this, and that's one of the reasons why we decided to go with an original story that hopefully matches up with the stories that were told by Ryan Shakes, and that way we can have a story that can like we're hoping to have a story that matches up with his work. Oh gosh, my words are I'm tripping over myself. We're hoping that our story matches up with Brian Jake's work, and that can feel like it belongs in the same world, even though it's in this video game setting. And we're hoping that by being able to call out some specific areas, like we have a lot of lore that is easy to kind of implement because making a little scroll that has some fun has a fun letter from say Basil Stag Hare to one of the characters in the game. It's like, oh hey, you know this character, and then you can like, and it's being written to this other character you just met, and so it kind of helps makes the world feel a lot bigger because for the people who have read the books, there is this a much deeper and much more expanded world that can be explored kind of by dropping little hints here and there, and so it makes it feel a lot more connected that way. um yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. And were you involved in a lot of the story writing for this first game, or were you strictly in the art department?
I'm pretty much strictly art, and the first part right now, one of the things I'm doing as part of my role in art director is I'm going back and forth with our narrative team because to make sure that things can be the art helps support the written narrative, or that the written narrative helps support the art, kind of which one is taking lead on whichever area we're in. Making sure, like I'm kind of double checking some of the work here and there, but that's more of a hey, this particular area feels better portrayed. But with Act One, the one that's the act that is out, that one is not. I wasn't part of the story for that in the same way. That is held up by our writer Sammy Riff and also our Chris Skaggs. Chris is the one who's mostly the one you hear a lot of. If you go look on the YouTube channel, you'll see a lot of him talking about what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of our forefront man on this, and so he has a lot of the vision, and he wrote a lot of the characters. Sammy was brought on as a narrative writer, and who then also has then gone on to and she wrote a lot of the dialogue for the first game. And so yeah, and then since then, actually only this last spring did we actually bring on a bunch of other writers, so that way that it wasn't just on those two to write out our whole story. And
Yeah.
now we have a narrative team who actually collaborate with each other, which is why I'm kind of brought in more on the narrative side, not necessarily to write out anything, but to point out, hey, this doesn't quite make sense with this particular visual. So
Mm-hmm. Did this game kind of force you to get more writers and get more staff on it to make it better?
yes, this game has forced us to not just writers but also artists and level designers. We're bringing on more people. Like we just actually have hired on 5 in the last month. We brought on 5 more artists.
Oh wow, that's great.
It's both great and also like, okay, well, that's a lot of people to manage, and for a person who has not managed a lot of people before. So that's part of my role is to do that. But
Yeah. Is that a very
so
stressful job?
it can be. Actually, I think one of the biggest things right now, I know in the podcast before you talked, I cannot remember her name. Who did you interview last?
Let's see. Her name was Lotta, but known online as. Sorry, now I know the name, for some reason I can't say it.
Give me a second.
You are now incognito.
You are now incognito. So Lotta, she talked about crunch.
Yes.
A little bit. And right now, we're getting into a time period of some crunch ourselves, actually, which is something that we're not satisfied with, but we recognize does need to happen for what is required of us with the game and the license and stuff like that. Some of these politics that go on behind the scenes is like, we don't want to, but this does need to happen, which is one of the reasons why we're bringing on more people, so we don't tire people out by getting other people work instead. But with that, then for me, I'm on the more production side right now. I'm slowly moving on to into the more of a management role, but during the week, I'm on more production side and helping out build out the levels, making sure everyone knows what certain areas should look like. And then on the weekends, I'm making sure, okay, everyone has all the resources they need going this next week, and the plans are there. I've actually spent part of today doing that, with planning out what our illustration team needs for their planned cinematics. So as their manager, I'm my and that's someone who's working on the in-game side of things, like where the 3D models are being and the actual levels are being made. I'll take screenshots of that. I'll bring in the mood boards we've already developed for these things, and then post them up online, and then the illustration, and then also show them some of the base illustrations we've already started that are like just some sketches so that they have something to work off of, and then they're just making those like gorgeous.
Oh,
And
okay.
they're able to use those resources. But it does take time for me to get those things together and all into one spot for them to see.
Yeah. Do you like looking at your? Are they your employees or is that?
Te- Technically, not my employees, but they're contract workers for us.
Oh, okay. Do you often like have a lot of fun just looking at how your coworkers make stuff?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I have been actually again speaking to these artists that I'm working with. They one of them delivered this illustration of composition that was just like, I want to show you or talk about it, and I don't know if I can because it's not technically out yet. Maybe that would be a really revealing moment too. So I can't say anything about what it is, but I was squealing over how beautiful this is and how great it was. And it was like, you took what we gave you and made it better and gorgeous. And this is now the background on my computer. She
It's
doesn't know
now.
this. She doesn't know this, but it is.
This is well. Hopefully, she listens to this podcast and knows who we're talking about.
I don't know if they will know, but we'll see.
Oh man. And do you think that any of the people playing the game will ever get to see it? Like, will be featured in the game, or will you sell the concept art somewhere?
Um, we don't have a marketing license, so we can't actually sell marketing merchandise. We don't have a merchandise license, so there's certain things we can't sell. We can't actually make little models of our characters and sell those. As much as I want to have a model of my character that I've made, um, but we have an art book that we're working on. That was a bunch of the concepts from the first act, and actually some of the ones that have made it into the other stuff too. So, but it doesn't. It features mostly my work and an artist named Jeremy Adams, who is working with us on Act One.
Oh, okay, so is it under the merchandising license? Is it like you can't make models, but you can sell books for some reason?
I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that I got told like, "Hey, we're doing this thing." It's like, okay, I'm assuming it's legal because I wasn't actually, but I'm not the one who's actually in charge of that. Make sure it looks. That's someone else who's our marketing. We have a marketing team made up of two people right now, but one of them is a marketer and another one's a marketing artist. And so the two of them are working together and making sure, kind of like collecting all the art things that we've made over the last 2, 3, 4 years. And like, hey, this works, this works, this works, this looks good. Okay, this page, this makes sense. Those kind of things, and they're going through those pieces together.
All right. What is it like seeing people respond to the artwork that you've made for this game? Like people responding to it.
I think it was really fun seeing the first piece of fan art for it. It was, um, I think that was the moment that was like, this is really cool. Actually, there's two really cool moments over that made me realize this is a really cool industry to be in. And it doesn't necessarily have to be game industry, but just art as in general.
Mm-hmm.
Was I told you I came on as a concept artist and was working on characters initially. And I was working on 2D primarily, which meant I didn't really have enough skill at the time to create the 3D side of it. And I have a very limited understanding of animation. I'm working on growing that. Doesn't mean I'm because I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about when I talk to people and I understand what they're telling me. But at the time, I'd been working on the 3D side and had made a couple of our first characters, Sophia and Liam, who at the time was actually called Simon. But we had those two, and we hand them off to this guy who's going to animate them, and we brought them back, and we're playing through, and we started like actually using them in the game, and I'm like, that's my character moving. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. It's like that's I made that, and she's now like it look she looks alive. She's doing these like I know it's fake because it's all animation, but it's like she's breathing, she's walking around, she's interacting with stuff. It's like this is so cool. And then the other moment was when we revealed Scum Snout, who's our major big bad guy from this first act. Um, we revealed his character design on one of our streams, I think. Yeah, on one of our streams, and one of the fans who have been coming back around consistently. She's her name is, I believe it's Nova Nocturne.
Nova Nocturne.
Nova, yeah, she has some pretty fun art. I know she's not active right now, but that's because she's going to school. I've made friends with her. That's why I do know this.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's.
Yeah.
Are you very interactive with your fans?
There is a fan Discord that almost all of us are on. It's not our official like SOMA sponsored or SOMA run Discord. It's run by fans for the game.
Oh, is that the Discord server advertised on the like Scout website? Because I did see that there was one advertised there.
I believe so. So, there's definitely a place to be able to interact with them there. That's more personable than you get on Facebook. And so I think Nova's been around for the last 3 years, so eventually we start you start like picking up on things, and she has to like write kind of questions about art as I'm doing, because I've been doing streams for or at one a lot of things there. At one point, as a company, we were trying to do a weekly stream because we want to make again trying to be transparent about what we're doing, and we ended up having to cut that because it cut too much into our actual development time because it slowed everything down. There's some other reasons into why we cut it. I'm not going to go into exactly at this moment, but for example, like in that section on one of those streams, I revealed Scum Snout's character design, and then she came back and Nova did. She was watching at that stream, and she came back and posted this picture of, guys, I love Scum Snout. He's great, or something like that, and had a picture of him, and I was like, that's fan art for a character I designed. What? It was like I hadn't. It was just like it was that kind of like, wait a minute, people like this stuff. Okay. It wasn't like it was a bad like. It wasn't bad. It was a. Oh right. I am, and some of those moments were like a little bit of, this is a really cool industry. Love being in the game industry, or creating these characters that can come to life and just do these things, which is fun and awesome. But also this like, oh, I realize I have some power, and because I'm working on the Redwall game, and as the art director, I help define what that looks like, which means moving forward, almost everyone's going to be looking at this, and like the TV show that came out for Redwall, as here are the things like this is what Redwall looks like. And I was like, and there's a little bit of like, I can't believe that's me. Why am I the one in charge of this? And I can think back through my history, and like I understand how I got here. I can't believe I got here, but at the same time, like I guess like this is really cool. I'm really like I have a bunch of feelings about it.
I can
that
tell.
Are, like, a little bit all over the place.
Oh, it seems like your emotions are almost bottlenecked by your, I don't know, physical capacity to portray them.
You say that, and you didn't actually see my little like hand bobble over on my end because you can't see me because I was like I'm physically moving as I talk.
Oh well. If we got a recording of you, it would just be you bouncing around the room while we're doing this podcast.
Oh, I think one of the other favorite things I like to do for the game is when we're doing animations, because we're taking animation references, which means I get to act really silly as I try and walk around like a big old monstrous wear-it. Or I'm a mole, I get to kind of do a waddle. What does this look like? So our animators have something to go off of. I emote physically. I definitely talk with my hands.
Yes. Oh, okay. Now I want to know, like, somewhere there's gotta be this footage of you waddling around like a mole rat, because that sounds amazing.
I personally have the footage because I had my coworker take the video with my phone.
Let's see. Well, if you can convince whoever runs the YouTube channel to upload that, that would be amazing.
I'll talk to them about that. I think one of our fun things that yeah, like bloopers or silly things like that are great.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I know that. Go ahead.
uh, like after the game's released or something, it could be like Redwall bloopers or whatever.
You don't understand. Our audio guys, not our audio guys, but our because our game is it has voice actors in it. Like we didn't cut the voice acting out because we felt that was going to be a really strong point for the narrative to actually have our characters talking. And I
Hmm.
think it's actually one of our strongest points personally because like you actually hear like being able to hear the characters and be able to get a feeling for who they are through that and not just it's definitely expensive, but because we don't have they just it's really nice this way.
Oh,
Um,
sorry. Repeat
but
that
a
last
couple
part.
it's just really nice to have them there. Um, but one of two of our voice actors just straight up sent their whole reel over to us for it to be cut up. Or no, what no, they oh no, it wasn't that. They at least one of them. I can't remember if both of them did exactly the same, but at least one of them when they sent over like here's all your lines and then here's all my bloopers from them too. So we have a 7 minute long blooper reel from them, going in and out of acting as the characters. Like one of them, um, actually, I think both of them did this. They both decided to pretend that they were on doing the voicemails as they're of one of our employees, so as they're getting into character, or they took one of the guys he plays our main character Liam, and Liam is a mouse. And then he also plays a different rat, I think, if I remember correctly. Maybe I'm wrong. But either way, he accidentally made Liam into a rat halfway through the line and left that in for us to hear. It's a bunch of really fun stuff like that. It's like being on the inside part of game development is both really, really satisfying and really funny to see, especially in the small studio that we have. I say small, relatively small compared to like bigger companies. And at the same time, like both, it's a really good challenge, strong, really good hard.
It sounds like you're having a lot of fun doing this. Would you say that this is your favorite game that you've worked on so far?
No, because it's really, in some way, I know I've worked on a couple other games, but it's the only game I've been on from start to finish, other than a throwaway game we did as a like break between G Prime and Redwall. And when I joined Soma, we were only I joined in more than halfway through G Prime's development.
Hmm.
So while I did some editing, I did some editing of textures. I brought in some other art on the 2D side that were helping like lore of the world be better built. Um, I wasn't really a part of it from start to finish, so I didn't have that same like connection of I developed this really like this is my baby at all.
Hmm.
While with Redwall, it's not well, it's there's in some ways I've it's my baby, and then others it's this is still a job and work, and at some point I will not it will no longer be mine to work on. But um, but I've been on Redwall for the whole time. So and I'm the working like the characters. I have almost I think we only have two characters in here that I didn't develop.
Only two. Okay, so most of all the characters then, except two of them, you developed them.
Yes, there's a couple in there that were done. The 3D models were done by another guy, but I'm the one who did the 2D concepts for all of them. And then one of our artists, actually, so a couple of the rats and a couple of our mice, we've given to we've given like early concepts like as kind of training opportunities to our to interns that we had over the years. That way they had an opportunity to try it, and then we took some of them had some great ideas, so we took those and actually made final concepts there too. So some of those are like I don't have like 100%. It's all mine, but majority of it is.
Oh, okay.
I think my hardest character to develop is. I mean, we've already revealed him. I hope so. Otherwise, I'm revealing him now. No, he's been revealed. is an owl named Captain Snow,
Captain
and
Snow. What kind of character is he?
he's actually from the books. He's in the very first book, uh, and so he's got a description in there where he's a little bit of a crazy guy, but he's a predator who you can you might who could become an ally. In the books, he's kind of like he threatens to eat all of the shrews. Like he does, that's what he's been doing. He's been eating all the shrews, and Matthias goes and ends up uh, half tricking him, half outmaneuvering him, like half getting it, like just kind of getting him to actually be agreeable with everyone and be nice to everyone. That's part of like that story is like what happens with Captain Snow. And, like he's um and I'm really like oversimplifying what that's part of the book is.
Hmm. I want to
Um
know, since you're working with characters that are from a book, what are you using as references for these characters since you're basically creating them?
so since Captain Snow is a snowy owl, I did a lot of research on snowy owls in general. Like what's the difference between males and females, which is actually how many spots they have their on their feathers. Um, Males are all white. Like what different types of feathers do they have in general? But the head shape, what do their skeletons look like? Because if I'm going to be the one who does the 3D model, I need to know that so way then our animators can correctly rig him. Um, I needed like there's a couple as my first bird character as well. I had like that was a big. That's when this is the reason why he is the hardest character I've created so far is because there's so much research that went into him and more back and forth between me as the modeler and our animators based on for what we needed him to do. Because I made a couple of mistakes during the modeling process initially, so I was like, okay, there's much more back and forth between us. Uh, it was a longer process to get him done and get him done well. Uh, but he was also really fun to figure out because of the personality that we were then pulling from the books. Uh, I think one of the things that we decided to go against is we're trying to like reference the fact that he's supposed to be a military type character, but he's also a little bit barbaric because he eats other creatures, and in the Redwall universe, that like there is the law of nature, but there's a lot more of killing other critters is wrong.
Hmm.
And so this is like moral ambiguity of where does the owl stand in this? Where do birds in general stand in this? Because they do need to eat, and they generally eat mice and or maybe and shrews, and they eat all these creatures that are our current main characters. And so we're like looking with this and having to find this balance. Like I know that one of the things I considered was um, while developing Captain Snow was what kind of clothing would he be wearing? Because I know that in the TV show he was depicted as having no clothing, which is fine. He's an owl.
Hmm.
Um, their characters also don't have pants, which I disagreed with. All of our characters have pants and tails.
Isn't that
Um,
something you're very passionate about? Like they must have pants?
I'm passionate about it because I think that it would. I think it's just the reason why most animal creatures don't have pants is a little bit of a cop out for not drawing pants that work with their tails. I think that's the reason why I don't like the idea of pants because I think pants on creatures because Disney does it. A lot of animal like anthropomorphic things do it, or they just kind of stick the tail on the pant. And they don't explain how does the tail work with these pants.
Hmm.
And so there's this question of well, what's going on there? And then we also had to decide as like internally, like as a culture, why do they wear pants? Why do these? Why do mice wear? Why do mice wear pants? Is it because they are trying to preserve? They're trying to cover up nudity? Are they trying to? Is it a purely cultural thing? Is it trying to stay warm? Like, what reasons do they wear clothing in general? Like, not just pants, but like an overshirt, a jacket. Why do they wear these things? And we decided it was a cultural thing, but we also, one of the things we've done with our pants on our mice and certain, like, depending on the character actually, and on our rats too, is that they actually have tails. We treat the tails as like another leg, so it doesn't. So the sleeves will go out onto they go part way down their tails for the most part. I think, and even we have a mole, and his name's Glimmer, and even though moles don't really have much of a tail, he still has a little bit of a covering of his tail,
Uh,
just at least a little bit. And I
that
know that
actually
one.
sounds really cute.
It's so cute and really fun, and makes it more of an interesting challenge for our concept artists. It's one of the things I think it gives us something that's challenging, but then will make sense. I think makes more sense, and also kind of like we get to think through these things, like how do these things work? Redwall might be a fantasy world, but it's not a fantasy genre.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't have magic in the same sense as like Lord of the Rings does. It doesn't have magic. It doesn't really have magical properties. Like they can't do magic. They might have some fantastical things, like the fact that you have, um, like the fact that the sword of Martin the Warrior tends to fit whoever holds it. Doesn't matter if they're a badger or a shrew. Like they're different sizes. They can always hold it, and it's a sword.
Mhm.
Or the fact that I think that's more the fact that the writing was vague about the size. Um, or the fact that there's always like kind of the ghost of Martin the Warrior, kind of very as a guiding force. But then there's like just kind of, I think in that sense it's big, but that can be found in that's not necessarily magic. And what they and so they don't really have magic as a running feature in the books, so we didn't want to include it in our games. And in that sense, um, and for us, then that means that we're kind of basing the world. It's based in like roughly 1400s, like technological era, and if we're going to go with like a practical approach to the world, that means they get have practical clothing.
Okay.
That was a really roundabout way of going about saying why they have clothing.
It was. I'm very surprised that you guys actually went through the topic of animals having clothing, because that's not usually something I hear about. It's usually like they're anthropomorphized animals. It's a style choice whether they have clothing, you know?
It is a style choice. We decided they wanted clothing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think part of it is because, from at least on my part, it also sets us apart from most everyone else. Suddenly, hey, these mice have tail sleeves that can be really fun if you design them. Like you can design them in different ways, and they can be fancy. Like the fact that you can put little puff sleeves on them, like you do like a shoulder cap. You would like you might put that, but you put out the at the middle of a tail sleeve, or like they might be bejeweled tails.
Uh-huh.
Like it's like suddenly it opens up a lot of like fashion choices that can be really telling of what the character is like. Like I know that one of our rats has a bunch of gold actually wrapped around her tail, um, and because she cares about her looks as a even though as a like that's one of the things that we did for her. Well, this other female rat doesn't actually have like her clothes are very slovenly, and it goes to the tail sleeve as well. Like she doesn't care about what's going on with her clothes at all, while the other one does. And so like while the tail sleeves like are how they decorate their tails, this kind of is the same thing how a woman might decorate her arm with bracelets.
Mhm.
It's a
Oh,
lot of fun. It's a
yeah,
fashion choice.
it really does sound like a lot of fun. Do you bring this stuff? Because to me, it sounds like you might bring a lot of this stuff up to your team. Like who would you say brings up most of the art direction stuff in your, uh, sorry, what's it called? A studio, right?
That's me. That's the art direction stuff. It goes through me. People check to see if things are cohesive between things because I'm the one who's supposed to be keeping track of all those things, like from our 2D to our 3D, from characters to environments, making sure things fit in the world together. So that all goes through me. And I guess speaking the last point I'll say regarding those tail sleeves is that those were actually developed well as a team. We weren't all we're still working on G Prime, so it was working on Redwall, and so I was running with ideas and able to. I had the time to be able to just run with things. We explored the idea of the eyes being too big or like smaller, if we wanted eyes to be all black or have color in them, and with white showing, like that was part of actually the development process for our decisions on characters, was what kind of stylization choices do we want to make for our characters that would apply to all species rather than just a single character.
Yeah, that's actually really funny to think about. Like as you're working on G Prime, which is this kind of sci-fi adventure type thing, you're trying to work out how the eyes and tail sleeves should work on these mouse animals for Redwall.
Mm-hmm. That was a fun time. I had two very different projects. It was great. It
Uh,
also like it make things interesting. It's like made things interesting overall. It was great.
yeah. Oh, what do you see in Soma Games' future? Like, do you see a lot of continuing with Redwall, or do you think you have another game in the progress?
So when Soma Games was concepted as a studio itself, there was games in the like there was four games that were like ideas that were developed. One of them is what is the world that G Prime lives in called Arc, ARC, and G Prime. Well, we have G Prime. There's at least two sequels to that game called F, and E, um, and they all like that whole series is a puzzle game. And we have G for gravity because that's the main force there. F is for force, and then E for energy, and those are kind of like our different. Those are going to be key to the puzzles that are going to be built for those games.
Oh, okay.
We have another series. I can't remember. We have three other ones, and I'm blanking on a couple of them. Actually, more than a couple. I can't remember them. I think one of them is built out. I can't remember if this is a part of the original four or not. I'm sorry, Spock. I'm gonna get off. No, no.
There's the cat you were talking about.
There's the cat who likes to. I put a cover on my chair, and he likes to use it as a declawing station. So he's like to scratch the chair, which I usually don't mind, except for when I'm trying to do a recording or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, for there's another one. There's another game besides the World of Arc. There's one called Wind Up Robots, which you've seen the evidence of that game, and there's that Wind Up Robots actually is the prequel to the initial game called the Game Idea, which is basically giant robots fighting with each other, and that which is honestly like since I first saw that one, and then I know that then Transformers came out, and so did whatever that movie with the Rift, the Pacific Rim came out. So you kind of already have that idea out there, but it was more of a like you would take these traditional like 50s era robots and have those fighting these giant monsters. And so that was I know the initial idea for that game. So these games that are like that have been sidelined over the years that I know are always just in the background. Like if we ever are at a loss of what to make, we're just going to pull in one of those. At this point, I think it would be F that we move on into because we already have a baseline for that one.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know for sure. But before we move on to those, we actually want to finish out Redwall. We have up to I think 5 or 6. It's 5 or 6. I think it's 6 game licenses that we can work with, and the Scout only fits one, and Act 1, 2, and 3 all just fit under one of those licenses. So we have plans for the Minor, which is focusing on a pair of mole siblings. We have the Archer, which focuses on a squirrel, and then I know that one, and then beyond that, we haven't settled on any names as far as I'm aware. I think it's actually called I think the fourth one's called the Pirate. We have names for a lot of these games ideas, as you can tell. Like I can name off all these things, but actually getting the time and the resources to develop them is one of the things that we're working on. So after the Scout's out and finalized, and we make sure it doesn't have at least too many bugs, then we'll be planning on moving into the Minor, ideally this next spring.
All right, that's good to hear. And also, bringing it back to that F game, I noticed on your webpage you have like this very mysterious type thing going on for it, where there's only like a couple concept art pieces on it for that. I'm just wondering, do you guys know like what you're doing for that, or is that like just a project you shelved as soon as you got to work on Redwall?
Actually, back in 2011, I did some tests for a test level. So I know there's at least some gameplay to it. But since then, over the since 2011, when picking up Redwall, we finalized G Prime and then went straight to Redwall, so we haven't had time to do F.
All right, that
So,
makes sense.
so shelved is really the right word for it. But yeah, we have. I think we have actually quite a few early concepts for the different projects that are coming up on 10 years old. But like sometimes just waiting is the waiting until the time's right to develop them is the right move.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh. We're also coming up on time, and because most of our audience here are probably beginner artists, we always ask a question at the end of these podcasts for beginners. And so this question is, how would you recommend that someone who's trying to flesh out a character design go about doing that?
I appreciate that that's the question because that's the one I know I have an answer to. Research. I know I spoke about it earlier with the owl, but um, character design and good character design, I think, has a lot of research that goes into it. If it's at the very minimum, finding inspirational pictures that create a mood board, or researching it, what a specific time period is like, um, or researching like making sure that or in my case with the app, researching to make sure I had my anatomy correct, so I didn't create an owl that was missed, like that the joints were all weird.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be that's I think that's the biggest piece that you can do to help inform good. Give me a second. My cat is currently laying down. Good there. Don't shuffle. All right, we'll let him be. Yeah, and so making sure that like there's a basis that you're building off of. I think it's going to be. And I think that's what really helps with good character design, other than some of the learning aspects. But that's, I think, the first thing I would say is start with research and then go into it.
All right, I think that's a lovely piece of advice. Is there anything you want to plug in before we end off the podcast?
Well, I mean, we talked a lot about Redwall. It'd be great if people bought our game. We are Act 1 of Redwall is out on Steam, Xbox, and PS4. We are currently in the works for Act 2 and 3, and that means that sometime soon those will be coming out, which keep an eye out for those.
All right, that's a good place to sign off. Goodbye,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks for having me.
No problem.